All he said to me was, go back to living your normal life and I'll see you in 3 months. And it just hit me then that I have to take control over my own health. I can't wait, 3 months to know if I'm healthy.
Welcome to the Hope Warrior Project podcast, where we bring you an extra dose of hope to help you get over the humps of life. I'm Stephanie Martino.
And I'm Lydia Zuniga, and together we are bringing you real stories of hope from real people. We believe by hearing other people's stories of challenge and transformation, we can all gain some hope for ourselves.
So if you've been looking to find and hold on to hope, you're in the right place. Join us on this journey as we all become warriors of hope. While playing tennis one day, Hayley noticed a pain in her right side. But the pain was significant enough that she ended up in the emergency room a few days later. After the doctors performed various tests, they discovered she had stage 3 ovarian cancer that had already spread to her appendix and colon. And within a period of 3-day time span, she underwent 2 surgeries that resulted in a total hysterectomy. The thing is, Hayley was only 29 years old at the time. She had a 2-year-old son, and she and her husband had been trying to conceive another child. The hysterectomy, however, meant that she could no longer bear children. But Hayley, you'll find out, isn't a person who gives up easily. After she received some really poor advice from a doctor, she knew she needed to take control over her own health, and that's exactly what she did. 23 years later, Hayley is here with us today. We are so thankful to share her story of survivorship with you. Thank you, Hayley, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, thank you for being with us. It's really an incredible story, and you have a lot to share. So we really appreciate you being vulnerable with our audience and being with us and spending this time with us. But let's go back to prior to that day on the tennis court. If you could just kind of paint the picture for our audience of what your life looked like, and if you were experiencing any symptoms up to that point, just kind of what was life like before you knew what was going on.
Yeah, so, I was really trying to manage career, motherhood, and marriage, and I don't think I was doing a very good job handling the stress of it all. I had a very stressful job and I was supposed to work part-time, and it really wasn't a part-time job. So I was trying to juggle taking care of my son while I was working. And, I didn't realize how stress was really getting the best out of me. And I said to my husband, if something doesn't change, I'm going to get sick. It's almost like intuitively I knew something isn't right. Ovarian cancer is very hard to detect until it's almost too late. It almost spread. And, as far as symptoms, but I do remember having heartburn, and it was probably like a month before I was diagnosed. And I do remember some bloating also, but at the time I was trying to have a second child. And so I was thinking, oh, maybe it's just from that. Maybe I could be pregnant. I don't know. And, I just kind of went with my busy schedule and went about my business until that day on the tennis court. And I really was having some pain in my right side.
So I think the explaining the symptoms away is very normal, right? I think we all run into things on a daily, weekly, monthly basis where it's like, oh, it's probably this, it's probably that. I can totally see how you would do that. And obviously, like you said, you were just starting or trying to have another child. So it would make sense that maybe you're feeling a little funny here and there. So going into this, you had then no idea, I guess, that there could be something bigger wrong.
Right. I'm a really optimistic person in general. So I thought, when I went to the emergency room, a few days later, I I'm thinking, oh, it's going to be fine. Nothing's going to be wrong, you know? And so when I woke up from surgery and my husband just looked awful and said to me, you have to survive. I mean, I was so out of it, but I later obviously found out it was stage 3 ovarian cancer. I was shocked. And then I got scared. You know, I just was scared that I wouldn't be around for my 2-year-old son. I felt frightened of what was next. You know, I don't think I was thinking in the future yet. I later, you know, when I became more aware and I found out, okay, I had a hysterectomy, then I started to be really sad and kind of that grieving process, like, wow, I'm no longer going to be able to have children. And, you know, is my husband going to want to stay with me if I can't bear any more children? Yeah, I think I lost part of my femininity. I felt like I lost part of my femininity. That was a big thing. So everyone handles grief in a different way, but for me, it was losing that part of me that, you know, I can no longer have children.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't imagine waking up and having all of that kind of dropped on you. And I could see, you know, like you spoke of like the grieving process, and, you know, like Stephanie and I have talked a lot about that in the past of like how, you know, we tend to think of grief associated with, you know, losing a loved one. Like that's like the most obvious way that we experience it. But really, like you grieve everything that you lose, everything, you know, even if it's something that you never had, right? It's an expectation that is no longer possible or something like that. So
Exactly. I had no idea.
So that had to have been, I guess, a pretty big shock when you got the diagnosis. You know, I think not that it's ever easy to hear you have cancer, I'm sure, but if you have maybe some idea that there could be something wrong, maybe you're a little more mentally prepared for it, but not having any idea, how did you even handle that news of your diagnosis? And then talk a little bit more about, you know, these 2 surgeries and the hysterectomy, because that wasn't necessarily something you knew was going to happen.
You know, it's so important to notice that and give yourself grace. The stages are tough, and then also they don't go in order, right? Not necessarily for everyone. So you bounce around and you feel bad that you're not like quote unquote getting over it because you're kind of all over the place, right? Like one day you're bartering, you know, you're you're making deals, and then the next day like you're depressed, you know. So it's just, that's something that we like to really remind our audience of, is that that's okay and it's part of the process, and not to, you know, overjudge yourself and really just walk with that grief instead of trying to fight against it, because I think that just makes it more difficult. So I mean, it sounds like it was a really tough thing for you to go through, especially on your mindset of, you know, worrying about how your husband feels about it, worrying about, you know, not quote unquote having like your womanhood anymore. Was there like a shift that you can kind of point to where you decided like, I'm not gonna stay there, right? Like I'm not gonna stay in this place of feeling bad for myself or focusing on the negative in this situation. Like what was that shift, and kind of what tools helped you to make that shift and sustain it?
Yeah, well, the first thing I remember is my best friend giving me a journal, and she told me to write 5 things I'm grateful for every day. She said, Oprah, it was on the Oprah Winfrey Show, and I happen to be a big Oprah fan. So I'm like, okay, I'm trying that. And, you know, I used it as a diary, and I would put things that were bothering me and things I was sad about, but then I would always put a positive twist on it. And, you know, something that my son did that day, you know, just that it was a beautiful sunny day or whatever that small thing was. So that helped a ton. It really did. And I talked to a lot of cancer survivors who feel similar. When you go through the process, you're just doing everything you can to stay healthy, do what the doctors tell you, you know, if they told you to do the chemotherapy, you think they're out for your best interest, of course, and you do what they tell you to do. And then when it's over, when things are finished, it's so scary because all of a sudden you feel like that loss of control. Okay, what am I doing now to control this cancer? And is it going to come back? And I remember after my final chemo treatment, asking the doctor all kinds of questions, the oncologist. And, I asked him about diet and lifestyle and, is there anything I can do to avoid recurrence going forward? And, are there any support groups for me or anything like that? There was really nothing. And all he said to me was, go back to living your normal life and I'll see you in 3 months. And it just hit me then that I have to take control over my own health. I can't wait, 3 months to know if I'm healthy. I'm not going to wait for some scan to tell me. So I just went home and talked to my husband and decided that, luckily with his support, that I was going to quit my job and stay home with my son. And I began to research foods and lifestyle techniques and mindsets, anything I can get my hands on, self-help books. I would go to nutrition lectures just to get myself healthy again and to hopefully avoid recurrence moving forward.
First of all, kind of going back to, you said how when you were journaling, you would write about the things that were bothering you, which I think is very helpful. Sometimes we just need to get it out of our heads, because for me, I'll speak for myself, when it sits in my head, it just expounds and exaggerates, and I come up with all other kinds of things, to make it so much worse. And then when I write it on paper, it's like, okay, I can get my mind really actually realistically wrapped around it. So I like how you said that, but that you also intentionally looked for a positive. And that made me think, something I've been thinking about lately is, how we choose to look at our life. And, we all could probably resonate with the example of when we take pictures on our phone and maybe we put a filter on it, right? We put something to make it look prettier, nicer, brighter, whatever, really enhances it, right? But we can put filters on our life. And so how are we choosing to put that filter on our life? And so we, I think, often can sometimes just go to that negative. Why is this happening to me? Now what am I going to do? My life's over. It could go that direction really easily. And I think that's no fault of anyone. That's just kind of human nature. But you chose to put this positive filter on your life and your situation and decided, okay, I'm going to do something about this. And the other thing that really hit me is you said, when you came back home, you decided, you and your husband decided that you quit your job. And I thought, we tend to make those drastic decisions and moves after something bad or horrible happens, right? Like it then forces us to make a decision that maybe we kind of thought maybe we should have done before. I mean, you had mentioned how you said, it was stressful, the job was stressful. You thought maybe it was going to be affecting your health, but not until this happened, did you maybe have the courage, to make that decision? And again, I think that's very common. And so it's really good to hear that, because I think any reminder that we can have about more proactive we can be about making decisions that are in the best interest of our health, our physical, mental, emotional, spiritual health, then, be brave to do that. So a lot of really great things that you went through and in the process that you went through. I know we talked about previously when we were preparing for this, you also mentioned this idea of how this difference between taking responsibility versus blaming yourself for maybe how you were living life, or maybe the decisions that you didn't make prior. Talk a little bit more about that and kind of how that was for you. Because again, I think that's something, like Lydia mentioned, giving ourselves some grace. If we're going to blame ourselves, that's not going to help the situation. So maybe talk about that process and how that was for you.
Yeah. So, I really took a good hard look at my life and thought about what needs to change. I mean, was I living an authentic life? Was I doing what I wanted to do? And I feel that I wasn't, that I was living, you know, with other people's expectations, you know, maybe my parents growing up or what my husband expected of me. It's not to blame yourself. Okay, I got cancer because I wasn't being true to myself and I was too busy and I, did this and that. It's just to really take a look and know what's important to you, know what you need to nurture yourself, what is important. And, I know so many women who blame themselves. They feel guilty because they got cancer and they have caretakers who now they're a burden. And so I really try to emphasize to people, do not blame yourself. Cancer happens for so many reasons, but I think it's your greatest teacher. So many of us women, we're trying to be all things to all people. And it's tough because we're nurturers. We want to take care of everyone first instead of really looking inside of us and looking at our needs.
We'll be able to connect with that, regardless if they're in a cancer journey or something else. So take us to today. You started researching, making changes in your life, focus on the gratitude. How has all this affected your life today? And kind of, what are you doing with this new knowledge, this new lifestyle today?
Yes. So, well, the amazing thing is that we adopted a second child less than a year after my diagnosis. So that was absolutely incredible. And, people ask often, do you think cancer is a gift? And, I wouldn't say that cancer is a gift. It's not something I would want to give to somebody else, but there's so many blessings that come out of it. And my son is definitely one of those blessings. I would have never had him if I didn't have cancer. The other thing is that I am blessed to work with women who, like me, have had cancer, have finished treatment, and, are fearful of recurrence. So I work with them to help them gain confidence that they will remain cancer-free and give them the tools to do that. And, again, I feel so lucky to be able to help these women, because I know when I was going through it, there was really no support. So it's very gratifying.
Obviously, you are a hope warrior, right? That's what brought us together. That's what connected us. We see you as a hope warrior, I should say, but what does that term mean to you?
So a hope warrior means to me that I could go through something like cancer and come out on the other end stronger and more resilient and even healthier than I was before. And that I could give people hope that they could do the same no matter what their challenge is.
Exactly. I mean, it's like, that could be our definition, really. Because it's that going through something that could be really challenging, really bad, life-threatening, and then you found the blessing from it, came out stronger on the other side, that warrior piece. So you talked a little bit about, you're working with other women today and helping them and their journeys, post cancer treatment, et cetera. Tell us about, what you're doing in that space and where people could find out more about what you offer or follow your journey if they would like to get more information for themselves.
My website is revivewellness.com. You could reach me there. There's a contact page. And I also have a free download. It's 7 top tips to keep cancer away and feel good in your body again. So anyone can download that. They would be on my email list, and then they will hear monthly from me inspirational tips and tools.
Well, thank you so much, Hayley. I think what you're doing is really, really important work. So I want to encourage you to keep going and applaud you for the work that you're doing. I think that there needs to be more awareness about your general lifestyle is going to affect your body. I remember the first time we talked, and when you told when you shared with us that the doctor was like, go back to the way you were living, like both me and Stephanie couldn't believe that, because I mean, that was a while back, right? I mean, it was a while ago. So we'll give him grace and we'll give everybody else grace. But now we know better, right? Now we know that the food we eat, like you said, the products we use, but even more than I think those things is your mindset, right? It's having this hope warrior mindset and taking responsibility, not taking responsibility in the way of blaming yourself, but taking responsibility in the way of knowing that you can help yourself. And that's so empowering. And that sticks out to me for sure in your story, because, you know, I've never had a drastic health scare like you have had, but I found myself in a place where I was feeling sorry for myself and like a victim. And it could have easily, like Stephanie was saying, went down that wrong filter road and started to do things that weren't going to show up in positive ways in my life. But even though I felt very much like a victim, making that decision to take responsibility and move forward and do things that are going to improve my situation for myself was so empowering. And that's where like this whole project kind of started. And it's so just amazing to hear all the different, you know, circumstances that people go through to get to that point. And they're so drastically different, but the feelings are so much the same. And so you're very much on the same mission as us of helping people to see that, you know, that we can do a lot more for ourselves than maybe we think we can. And so thank you so much for sharing your perspective and your story with our community. I know that they will feel encouraged and hopeful.
This was a lot of fun. And I did want to say one other thing that you kind of reminded me, you know, to surround yourself with people that lift you up. You know, I think we tend to sometimes be in toxic relationships, and, you know, even if it's a friendship, I'm not necessarily saying a spouse or something like that, but that is so important when you want to stay healthy. So I just wanted to add that.
Well, thank you for sharing that additional point. And yes, we totally agree with that. And that's part of why we're really working to try to build this community of hope warriors. It's just for that purpose, you know, to lift each other up and encourage one another, be able to take things away from stories just like yours that we can, you know, glean something for our own lives. And then more specifically, if someone, I know there are people that are listening to this episode that maybe are going through their own cancer journey that will want to find out, what did you do? Because maybe there's something that they can utilize for their life. So anyone listening, go check out Hayleys' website, get that free guide that she mentioned. Any information that we have can always just be helpful, and we take what works for us. So thank you again, Hayley. Hey, Lydia, remember when we wanted to start this podcast, but we had no idea where to start?
Yes. And when someone told us about Anchor, we were so surprised at how easy it was to use.
I know. Well, since we get questions about this quite often, we should probably let our audience know why we love it, in case maybe they're wanting to start their own podcast.
Okay, well, first of all, it's everything we need to make a podcast in one place for free.
And I love that. I also love that there are creation tools that allow us to record and edit the podcast right from a phone or computer, and they're super easy to use.
Plus, Anchor distributes the podcast so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. And we can even make money with our podcast regardless of how many listeners.
So, guys, if you're thinking of starting a podcast, download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Thank you for joining us today. Go take a listen to our other episodes. We think you'll be encouraged and inspired by what you hear.
Are you interested in sharing your story of hope on this podcast? Contact us at hopewarriorproject@gmail.com. We'd love the opportunity to help you share your story.